Hello, billionaireette. How you doing? Welcome to another day of amazing reading with you. Hope you've been having a wonderful week so far. And most importantly, I hope you're having a remarkable growth. With all these readings, it's just pretty ridiculous. If you've been following along, this is actually, we're in chapter 2, part 2. We're going to be finishing off Rich Dad Poor Dad, chapter 2. So today we're going to be digging deeper within some of the income and the assets and the liabilities and the expenses. It's been a blessing, to reread this and really dig deeper within everything that Robert has been sharing, because it's truly timeless. I truly believe this is a timeless book, and it's so relevant to our times today. So if you do have a cup of tea, if you have a cup of coffee, however you want to have it, I cheers with you right now, today, and forever. Salud. Shall we? All right. How the quest for a financial dream turns into a financial nightmare. The classic story of hardworking people has set a pattern. Recently married, the happy, highly educated young couple now share a cramped rented apartment. Immediately, they realize that they are saving money because two can live as cheaply as one. The problem is the apartment is cramped. They decide to save money to buy their dream home so they can have their kids. They now have two incomes, and they begin to focus on their careers. Their incomes begin to increase. As their income goes up, their expenses go up as well. And then he has this really cool box where the income is up and also the expenses are up. The number one expense for most people is taxes. Most people think it's income tax, but for most Americans, their highest tax is Social Security. As an employee, it appears as if the Social Security tax combined with the Medicare tax rate is roughly 7.5%, but it's really 15% since the employer must match the Social Security amount. In essence, it is money the employer can't pay you. On top of that, you still have to pay income tax on the amount deducted from your wages for Social Security tax. Income you never received because it went directly to Social Security through withholding. Going back to the young couple, as a result of their incomes increasing, they decide to buy the house of their dreams. Once in their house with a mortgage, they have a new tax called property tax. Then they buy a new car, new furniture, new appliances to match their new house. All of a sudden, they wake up and their liabilities column is full of mortgage and credit card debt. Their liabilities go up. They're now trapped in the rat race. Pretty soon, a baby comes along and they work harder. The process repeats itself. Higher incomes cause higher taxes, also called bracket creep. A credit card comes in the mail. They use it to max it out. A credit card comes in the mail. Again, they max it out. A loan company calls and says their greatest asset, their home, has appreciated in value. Because their credit is so good, the company offers a bill consolidation loan and tells them the intelligent thing to do is to clear off the highest interest consumer debt by paying off their credit cards. And besides, mortgage interest is a tax deduction. They go for it and pay off those high interest credit cards. They breathe a sigh of relief. Their credit cards are paid off. They've now folded their consumer debt into their home mortgage. Their payments go down because they extended their debt over 30 years. It is a smart thing to do. Their neighbor calls to invite them to go shopping. The Memorial Day sale is on. They promise themselves they'll just window shop, and they take a credit card just in case. I run into this young couple all the time. Their names change, but their financial dilemma is the same. They come to one of my talks to hear what I have to say. They ask me, "Can you tell us how to make more money?" They don't understand that their trouble is really how they choose to spend the money they do have. It is caused by financial illiteracy, not by understanding the difference between an asset and a liability. More money seldom solves someone's money problems. Intelligence solves problems. There is a saying a friend of mine uses over and over to people in debt. If you find you have dug yourself into a hole, stop digging. As a child, my dad often told us that the Japanese were aware of 3 powers: the power of the sword, the jewel, and the mirror. The sword symbolizes the power of weapons. America has spent trillions of dollars on weapons, and because of this is it has a powerful military presence in the world. The jewel symbolizes the power of money. There is some degree of truth to the saying, remember the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. The mirror symbolizes the power of self-knowledge. This self-knowledge, according to the Japanese legend, was the most treasured of the 3. All too often, the poor middle class allow the power of money to control them. By simply getting up and working harder, failing to ask themselves if what they do makes sense, they shoot themselves in the foot as they leave for work every morning. By not fully understanding money, the vast majority of people allow its awesome power to control them. If they used the power of the mirror, they would have asked themselves, does this make sense? All too often, instead of trusting their inner wisdom, that genius inside, most people follow the crowd. They do things because everybody else does them. They conform rather than question. Often, they mindlessly repeat what they have been told. Diversify. Your home is an asset. Your home is your biggest investment. You get a tax break for going into greater debt. Get a safe job. Don't make mistakes. Don't take risks. It is said that the fear of public speaking is a fear greater than death for most people. According to a psychiatrist, the fear of public speaking is caused by the fear of ostracism, the fear of standing out, the fear of criticism, the fear of ridicule, and the fear of being an outcast. The fear of being different prevents most people from seeking new ways to solve their problems. That's a big one. If you are ever scared to speak in public, if you ever had that fear, or if you ever had an experience where you spoke in public and you totally flunked, make sure to put it in the chat. I've been there, for sure. In the sense of, I grabbed that mic and I forgot what I said because I totally blacked out. I don't know why. And it was actually a subject that I know very, very much about. But for some reason, I was just like so nervous. But this all makes sense, you know? The fear of public speaking is caused by the fear of ostracism, the fear of standing out, the fear of criticism, especially when you're surrounded by peers that are, you know, maybe way more successful than you, or have reached a certain level of financial accomplishments. Like, it could be intimidating, you know? But anyways, that's a whole different video, so stay tuned for that. This is why my educated dad said the Japanese valued the power of the mirror the most. For it is only when we look into that mirror that we actually find the truth. Fear is the main reason that people say play it safe. That goes for anything, be it sports, relationships, careers, or money. It is that same fear, the fear of ostracism, that causes people to conform, to not question commonly accepted options or popular trends. Your home is an asset, get a bill consolidation loan, and get out of debt. Work harder, it's a promotion. Someday I'll be a vice president, save money. When I get a raise, I'll buy us a bigger house. Mutual funds are safe. Many financial problems are caused by trying to keep up with the Joneses. Occasionally, we all need to look into the mirror and be true to our inner wisdom rather than our fears. By the time Mike and I were 16 years old, we began to have problems in school. We were not bad kids, we just began to separate from the crowd. We worked for Mike's dad after school and on weekends. Mike and I often spent hours working, just sitting at the table with his dad while he held meetings with bankers, attorneys, accountants, brokers, investors, managers, and employees. Here was a man who had left school at 13, who was now directing, instructing, ordering, and asking questions of educated people. They came at his beck and call and cringed when he didn't approve of them. Here was a man who had not gone along with the crowd. He was a man who did his own thinking and detested the words, "We have to do it this way because that's why everybody else does it." He also hated the word can't. If you wanted him to do something, just say, "I don't think you can do it." That's a good one. That's so true. If someone, or actually put this also in the comments, or like this video if you agree with this. If someone tells you you can't do it, it kind of ignites that lion within you and is like, ooh, just wait and see this. Shout out to my mother-in-law, because literally this line right here, that's her right there. That's her battle cry. So shout out to you, Marcia. Mike and I learned more sitting in on his meetings than we did in all of our years of school, college included. Mike's dad was not book smart, but he was financially educated and successful as a result. He told us over and over and over again, an intelligent person hires people who are more intelligent than he is. So Mike and I had the benefit of spending hours listening to and learning from intelligent people. But because of this, Mike and I couldn't go along with the standard dogma of our teachers that preach what was going on at school. That's what caused problems. Whenever the teacher said, "If you don't get good grades, you won't do well in the real world," Mike and I just raised our eyebrows. When we were told to follow set procedures and not deviate from the rules, we could see how school discouraged creativity. We started to understand why our rich dad told us that schools were designed to produce good employees instead of employers. Occasionally, Mike or I would actually ask our teachers how what we studied was applicable in the real world, or why we'd never study money, how it actually worked. To the latter question, we often got the answer that money was not important, that if we excelled in our education, the money would follow. That whole line, the money would follow. We've heard that so many times. You gotta put this also in the comments. If you believe that, money would just follow, if you just think and hope and pray that it will, do you believe that that's all it takes for money to actually come your way? Put it in the comments. Very curious about that. My highly educated dad never pressured me about my grades. but we did begin to argue about money. By the time I was 16, I probably had a far better foundation with money than both of my parents. I could keep books, I listened to tax accountants, corporate attorneys, bankers, real estate brokers, investors, and so forth. By contrast, my dad talked only to other teachers. One day, my dad told me that our home was his greatest investment. A not too pleasant argument took place when I showed him why I thought a house was not a good investment. And this is a diagram that he has here, where you can actually take a closer look at what's going on. It's basically rich dad, he has his home as a liability, and poor dad has his home as an asset. The diagram above illustrates the difference in perception between my rich dad and my poor dad when it came to their homes. One dad thought that his house was an asset, and the other dad thought it was a liability. I remember when I drew the following diagram for my dad, showing him the direction of cash flow. I also showed him the ancillary expenses that went along with owning the home. A bigger home meant bigger expenses, and the cash flow kept going out through the expense column. Today, people still challenge me on the idea of a house not being an asset. I know that for many people, it is their dream as well as their largest investment, and owning your own home is better than nothing. I simply offer an alternative way of looking at this popular dogma. If my wife and I were to buy a bigger, flashier house, we realize it wouldn't be an asset. It would actually be a liability since it would take money out of our pocket. So here's the argument I put forth. I really don't expect most people to agree with it because your home is an emotional thing. And when it comes to money, high emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. Oof. That line right there. Oh my gosh. I really don't expect most people to agree with it because your home is an emotional thing. And when it comes to money, high emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. High emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. I know from personal experience that money has a way of making every decision emotional. So here are some bullet points that he has in the book. When it comes to houses, most people work all their lives paying for a home they never own. In other words, most people buy a new house every few years, each time incurring a new 30-year loan to pay off the previous one. Even though people receive a tax deduction for interest on mortgage payments, they pay for all their other expenses with after-tax dollars, even after they pay off their mortgage. My wife's parents were shocked when the property taxes on their home increased to $1,000 a month. They had already retired, so the increase put a strain on their budget. Houses do not always go up in value. I have friends who owe $1 million for a home that today would sell for far less. The greatest losses of all are those from missed opportunities. If all your money is tied up in your house, you may be forced to work harder because your money continues blowing out of the expense column instead of adding it to the asset column. The classic middle class cash flow pattern. If a young couple would put more money into their asset column early on, their later years would be easier. Their assets would have grown and would be available to help other expenses. Making a decision to own a house that is too expensive in lieu of starting an investment portfolio impacts individual in at least the following 3 ways. This is so important. It's so crazy. And what's crazy, and I'll share with you a personal story. For the past 5 years, we've been traveling all over the world. For 2 years, we lived in Asia. Then we moved to Austin, Texas. From there, we went to Florida, lived in Fort Lauderdale during the quarantine of 2020. Y'all remember that? Crazy times. And then we went to Europe for like over 6 months. And then now we're here in Mexico. We've never owned a home. I repeat, we've never owned a home. We've rented some really, really nice places. And it's kind of nice. Actually, it's really, really nice to be able to rent and not have to worry about anything else. And it just hit me right now that we've never paid property taxes, which is a blessing, because that is a hidden expense that just, you don't realize it until it hits you. Anyways, let's go back into this. He's saying that making a decision to own a home is way too expensive in lieu of starting an investment portfolio, because it impacts individuals in at least the following 3 ways. 1, loss of time, during which other assets could have grown in value. 2, loss of additional capital, which could have been invested instead of paying high home maintenance expenses. 3, loss of education. Too often people count their house and savings and retirement plans as all they have in their asset column because they have no money to invest. They simply don't invest. This costs them investment and experience. Most never become what the investment world would call a sophisticated investor. And the best investments are usually first sold to sophisticated investors, who then turn around and sell them to the people playing it safe. I'm not saying don't buy a house. What I am saying is that you should understand the difference between an asset and a liability. When I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house. Let me read that again. When I want a bigger house, aka liability, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow, passive income, to pay for that house. My educated dad's personal financial statement best demonstrates the life of someone caught in the rat race. His expenses match his income, never allowing him enough left over to invest in assets. As a result, his liabilities are larger than his assets. I'm just gonna highlight this right here. It's so good. In the illustrations below, the left shows my poor dad's income statement. It is worth 1,000 words. It shows that his income and expenses are equal, while his liabilities are larger than his assets. My rich dad's personal financial statement on the right reflects the results of a life dedicated to investing and minimalizing any liabilities. This is the 2 different diagrams that are here. Really, really great. Really, really, really great. Wow. So, why do the rich get richer? A review of my rich dad's financial statement shows why the rich get richer. The asset column generates more than enough income to cover expenses. With the balance reinvested into the asset column continues to grow, and therefore the income it produces grows with it. The result is that the rich get richer. Why do the middle class struggle? Well, the middle class finds itself in a constant state of financial struggle. Their primary income is through their salary. As their wages increases, so do their taxes. Their expenses tend to increase in proportion to their salary increase. Hence the phrase, the rat race. They treat their home as their primary asset instead of investing in income-producing assets. This pattern of treating your home as an investment and the philosophy that a pay raise means you can buy a larger home or spend more is the foundation of today's debt-ridden society. Increased spending throws families into greater debt and into more financial uncertainty, even though they may be advancing in their jobs and receiving pay raises. This is a high-risk living caused by weak financial education. The massive loss of jobs in recent times proves how shaky the middle class really is financially. Company pension plans are being replaced by 401k plans. Social Security is obviously in trouble and can't be relied upon as a source for retirement. Panic has set in for the middle class. Today, mutual funds are popular because they supposedly represent safety. Average mutual fund buyers are too busy working to pay taxes and mortgages, save for their children's college, and pay off credit cards. They do not have time to study investing, so they rely on their expertise of the manager of a mutual fund. Also, because the mutual fund includes many different types of investments, they feel their money is safer because it is diversified in quotation marks. The educated middle class subscribes to the dogma put out by mutual fund brokers and financial planners. Play it safe, avoid risk. The real tragedy is that the lack of early financial education is what creates the risk faced by average middle class people. The reason they have to play safe is because their financial positions are tenuous at best. Their balance sheets are not balanced. Instead, they are loaded with liabilities and have no real assets that generate income. Typically, their only source of income is their paycheck. Their livelihood becomes entirely dependent on their employer. So when a genuine deal of a lifetime comes along, these people can't take advantage of them because they are working so hard, are taxed to the max, and are loaded with debt. As I said at the start of this section, the most important rule is to know the difference between an asset and a liability. Once you understand the difference, concentrate your efforts on buying income-generating assets. That's the best way to get started on the path of becoming rich. Keep doing that, and your asset column will grow. Keep liabilities and expenses down so more money is available to continue pouring into the asset column. Soon the asset base will be so deep that you can afford to look at more speculative investments. Investments that may have returns of 100% to infinity. $5,000 investments that are soon turned into $1 million or more. Investments that the middle class calls too risky. The investment is not risky for the financially literate. If you do what the masses do, you get the following picture. In that particular diagram, it's basically saying that your income statement, you work for a company, which is your salary, and then your expenses, you work for the government, which are your taxes, and then you have a balance sheet with assets and a liability column, but there's nothing in assets, and your liabilities are that you're actually working for the bank. You're paying off your mortgage. As an employee who is also a homeowner, your working efforts are generally as follows. It has 3 points. 1, you work for the company. So that means that employees that make their business owner or the shareholders rich and not themselves. Your efforts and success will help provide for the owner's success and retirement. Number 2, you work for the government. The government takes a share from you, from your paycheck, before you even see it. By working harder, you simply increase the amount of taxes taken by the government. Most people work from January to May just for the government. You work for the bank. That's number 3. After taxes, your next largest expense is usually your mortgage and credit card debt. The problem with simply working harder is that each of these 3 levels takes a greater share of your increased efforts. You need to learn how to increase your efforts so you and your family are benefited directly. Once you have decided to concentrate on minding your own business, focusing your efforts on acquiring assets instead of a bigger paycheck, how do you set your goals? Most people must keep their job and rely on their wages to fund their acquisitions of assets. As their assets grow, how do they measure the extent of their success? When does someone know that they are rich, that they have wealth? As well as having my own definitions for assets and liabilities, I also have my own definition for wealth. Actually, I borrowed it from a man named R. Buckminster Fuller. That's some name, right? R. Buckminster Fuller. Some call him a quack, and others call him a genius. Years ago, he got architects buzzing because he applied for a patent for something called the geodesic dome. But in the application, Fuller also said something about wealth. It was pretty confusing at first, but after reading it, it began to make sense. This is what he said. Wealth is a person's ability to survive so many numbers of days forward. Or, if I stopped working today, how long could I survive? That's deep. If I stopped working today, how long could I survive? Unlike net worth, which is the difference between your assets and liabilities, and is often filled with a person's expensive junk and options and opinions of what things are worth, the definition creates the possibility for developing a true, accurate measurement. I could now measure and know where I was in terms of my goal to become financially independent. Although net worth often includes non-cash producing assets, like the stuff you bought that now sits in your garage, wealth measures how much money your money is making and therefore your financial survivability. So this is really important right here. Wealth measures how much money your money is making and therefore your financial survivability. Wealth is the measure of the cash flow from the asset column compared with the expense column. Let's use an example. Let's say I have a cash flow from my asset column of $1,000 a month, and I have a monthly expense of $2,000. What is my wealth? Well, let's go back to Buckminster Fuller's definition. Using his definition, how many days forward can I survive? Assuming a 30-day month, I have enough cash flow for half of that month. When I achieve $2,000 a month cash flow from my assets, then I will be wealthy. So, while I'm not rich yet, I am wealthy. I now have income-generated assets each month that fully cover my monthly expenses. If I want to increase my expenses, I first must increase my cash flow to maintain this level of wealth. Also, note that it is very important that I'm no longer dependent on my wages. I have focused on and been successful in building an asset column that has made me financially independent. So if I quit my job today, I would be able to cover my monthly expenses with the cash flow from my assets. Think about that today. If you stop doing calls, let's say that's your business, or if you stop going to your job, if you stop driving your commute to your job, or you decide to quit wherever you're working right now, or you stop running your business, how long can you survive? How long can you survive? That's strong. Survivability. My next goal would be to have the excess cash flow from my assets reinvested into my asset column. The more money that goes into my asset column, the more my asset column grows. The more my asset grow, the more my cash flow grows. And as long as I keep my expenses less than the cash flow from the assets, I grow richer with more and more income from sources other than my physical labor. As this reinvestment process continues, I am well on my way to becoming rich. Just remember this simple observation. 1. The rich buy assets. 2. The poor only have expenses. 3. The middle class buys liabilities they think are assets. So how do I start minding my own business? What is the answer? Listen to the founder of McDonald's in the next chapter. Wow. What a chapter. What a chapter. I'm telling you. So many golden nuggets in this one. Like now we're getting into the real practical, like the real nitty-gritty stuff that really makes a difference when it comes to, your personal life, your financial life, and the decisions you got to make sure that you survive. This is about survival. This is not about pretty things. This is not about, cars or watches or, fancy flashy things that are currently perceived to be an asset. This is literally survival. If you stop doing what you're doing today, whatever's giving you a paycheck, whatever's bringing money in, if you stop doing that today, how long can you survive? That is the question. Put it in the comments. If you want to learn more about this and you want to dig deeper into all this, this is what we're going to be discussing in the Billionaire Inner Circle, in the weekly calls. It's on fire. Like, people's lives are changing. People are really dedicated. And most importantly, they're treating 2021 as their best year ever. So make 2022, sorry. I can't believe I said 2021. I was thinking about 2021. How I'm grateful of what we did, because 2022 is even better. But what I'm saying is, like, they're treating 2022 as their best year ever, So get ready, y'all. Like, if you don't have your assets in check, how long can you survive? Without further ado, hope you're having a beautiful day. Stay tuned for the next chapter. It's going to be wild.